Laser cannon ready. The savior rises.
Aemeath, the Exostrider Resonator looking to save the world, has finally arrived in the first half of Wuthering Waves 3.1, equipped with one of the most explosive and jaw-dropping movesets in the game and the damage output to match. Her kit, however, does come with some restrictions, but a variety of budget-friendly options and gearing make her an incredible pick for almost any player. As a fusion, liberation damage-focused hypercarry with two unique playstyles that synergize with Toon Rupture or Fusion Burst, she'll synergize best with teammates like Linné, Mornier, Lupa, and Chisa, but she still has the potential to work in other more budget lineups. With that, welcome to our full-scope, comprehensive guide to Aemeath, the newest addition to Wuthering Waves, and I'm here to break down everything when it comes to how she works, what her best equipment will be, and the steps you need to take across her team building and rotations to make the most out of her insane damage potential. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Aemeath, with her baseline kit, focuses on the generation and consumption of her Forte circuit to build up another resource in her kit, Resonance Rate, to deliver a massive amount of liberation damage to her enemy, so her Forte is where we'll begin. Aemeath has a unique resource called Synchronization as her default Forte, with a cap of 200 points. This resource is built up through a variety of methods, the first being Aemeath's basic attacks. In Resonator form, her basic attack is a simple 4-hit attack chain, while her heavy attack has 2 stages of charging. The first requires little charge time and simply deals fusion damage and allows her to advance to the second stage of her basic attack chain, while the second has a longer charge, deals liberation damage, and can be changed into the third stage of her basic. Her mid-air attack is a plunge that chains into her second basic, and her dodge counter allows her to chain to the fourth stage of her basic attack chain. However, Aemeath also has a mech that can be accessed by using her resonance skill, Shared Voyage. This mech has nearly identical inputs to the Resonator form, sharing a 4-hit basic attack chain, the same mechanic of charging heavy attacks, plunge, and dodge counter. After using the second, third, or fourth basic attack, heavy attack, or her dodge counter in either of her forms, Aemeath gains a sync attack that can be used by performing her resonance skill that can be changed into the second hit of either form's attack chain. Another method of building her Forte is by using an intro skill in either of her forms, which recovers 40 points. A third method is through the use of her first Resonance Liberation, which grants 30 points. We'll pause on this one for now, since to fully explain her liberation, we've got to first break down the rest of her Forte. Building up Aemeath's synchronization rate is essential because it gives her access to her Seraphic Duet attacks. Whenever Aemeath completes the fourth stage of either form's basic attack chain, she enters Seraphic Duo for 5 seconds. With this state active in either form and over 100 synchronization rate, Aemeath can use an enhanced resonance skill to consume 100 points of her Forte, swap to her other form, and deal a massive amount of fusion liberation damage. This attack can also be chained into the second hit of her new form's attack chain. These attacks are incredibly important to trigger in her rotation because they deal a lot of damage and also apply Aemeath's unique debuffs, Toon Rupture and Fusion Burst. In the character select screen, Aemeath can choose either resonance mode. When in Toon Rupture mode, whenever teammates respond to Toon Rupture, 10 stacks of Rupture's Trail are inflicted on the target for 30 seconds, with up to 30 stacks max. The third and fourth stages of her basics in either form, her Sync Strikes and intro skills will all inflict Toon Rupture shifting onto her target. When Seraphic Duet hits an enemy, the attack will additionally deal 5 instances of Toon Rupture damage to a random target in range, remove Rupture's Trail, and increase the damage multiplier of the Toon damage based on the stacks removed, increased by 4% for 2.5 seconds per stack. In Fusion Burst mode, on the other hand, Aemeath instead inflicts Fusion Trail on the target every time Fusion Burst is inflicted, with a duration of 30 seconds and a cap of 30. Whenever an enemy has 0 stacks of Fusion Burst, they'll automatically receive one, and when targets have more than 5 stacks, Fusion Burst will be immediately triggered based on its max stack limit. This makes Chisa, who increases the stack limit by 3, very strong with her. The same attacks that apply Toon Rupture to the target will also inflict Fusion Burst, so we'll just relist all of them back here. When Fusion Burst Seraphic Duet hits an enemy, she detonates their Fusion Trail stacks and triggers Fusion Burst based on its max stack limit without removing its stacks. Each stack of Fusion Trail increases the damage multiplier of the burst by 10%. It should be pretty clear by now how important these Seraphic Duet attacks are, but remember that liberation that we skipped over before? Your duets are important for that too. Aemeath's first liberation cast also deals fusion damage, swaps her to mech form, and triggers 2 buffs, Stardust Resonance and Heavenfall Edict Unbound. It also gives her a special buff that causes her next Seraphic Duet to not consume either of her trails. Let's talk about the buffs first. Stardust Resonance, which lasts for 30 seconds, buffs the next 2 casts of Aemeath's Seraphic Duet. In Rupture form, the attack deals 10 extra instances of Rupture damage. In Fusion Burst form, the damage multiplier of the burst is increased by 200% on the main target, stackable with Fusion Trail's damage bonus. Her next buff, Unbound, lasts for 60 seconds, replacing her liberation with Heavenfall Edict Finale. To cast this ability, which deals a massive amount of resonance liberation damage while summoning the Exostrider, Aemeath has to build up yet another resource in her kit, Resonance Rate, and restack her synchronization rate back to 200. This sounds a bit complicated, but it's easier than you think. Resonance rate has a cap of 4 and is increased by 1 whenever a Seraphic Duet is used. Her Liberation also grants another point, while her intro skill has a special buff, Starloom Acceleration, that doubles the gain from her Liberation. This means that with an intro skill and 2 uses of her Seraphic Duet and Liberation, you'll cap out her resonance rate. Once resonance rate is capped, Aemeath enters instant response. In this state, her heavy attack will charge much faster, and when used, it'll instantly regenerate 200 points of her synchronization rate. This then allows Aemeath to use Heavenfall Edict Finale at the end of her rotation. The last couple of pieces of Aemeath's kit is her ability to respond to Toon Rupture when an enemy is Toon Broken, which makes sense. Out of combat, Aemeath has a unique resource called Starflux that regenerates faster when not fighting that can be used to fly around. Have fun. When you factor in all of Aemeath's abilities, resources, and interactions with each other, she has one of the most wordy and complex kits in the game, and a playstyle that's almost the direct opposite of that. And once you've learned how her rotation works to build up these resources, you shouldn't have too much of an issue figuring her out. You'll simply intro in, build up her forte with basics, use her ultimate to trigger her buffs, then perform 2 Seraphic Duet attacks, charge up her resonance rate, and then use her instant response heavy attack, and then drop down the Exo Strider before outro skilling to another teammate, granting a 10 to 20% damage amp to her entire team for 20 seconds, depending on her resonance mode. And if a teammate can inflict Rupture or Fusion Burst, they'll get a bigger bonus. When it comes to her inherent skills, Aemeath's are very strong. Her first grants her 200% damage amp to her heavy attacks during instant response, while her second gives her insane damage buffs depending on her resonance mode and teammates. In Rupture mode, each teammate who inflicts or deals Rupture damage increases Aemeath's crit damage by 20%, up to 3 times. Each teammate can only apply this once, and she applies 1 stack herself. With 3 stacks, she gains 25% amp on Heavenfall Edict Finale. This can be accomplished by running her with Mornier and Lene. In Fusion Burst mode, each Resonator who can inflict Fusion Burst increases her crit damage by 30% with a max of 2 stacks. Aemeath is also just 1 stack here. With 2 stacks, Finale also gains that same 25% amp. Maximizing this buff is not possible in version 3.1, and we will have to wait for another user of the new Chromatic Foam Sonata set to complete this team. Aemeath is a character who completely changes the team building meta in Wuthering Waves due to the design of her resonance forms and her ability to work in a variety of different lineups. However, it's clear that a majority of her demanded teammates are very, very premium picks, with picks like Lene, Mornier, Chisa, Lupa, and of course the unreleased Fusion Burst sub DPS as her ideal options. However, Aemeath makes up for this by being one of the top performing units without their signature, making it a big priority to pull her teammates first before pulling her weapon, and you'll see why once we get to the damage calcs. The best part about her performance? Her teammates aren't tied to her, and you likely might already have them from building out popular past lineups like Mono Fusion, and if you do pull for her teammates, they can form their own unique compositions later down the line. An excellent pick for any player. When it comes to actually building Aemeath, starting off with her skill priority, you'll want to maximize her Forte and Liberation first, as they'll be her biggest sources of damage. However, you also want to maximize her basic and skill, as her heavy attack, which gains 200% amp during instant response, scales with those abilities based on her Resonator or mech form. This means the only ability you can really save mats on is her intro skill, so keep that one below level 6 if you need to save weekly boss mats. Now let's talk about her weapons, and there's only 2 real options we need to talk about here. Big thanks to Pridewin for calculating these results. Let's start off with her signature, Everbright Polestar. This weapon gives a standard blend of attack and crit rate, 12% attribute damage, and a whopping 32% defense and 10% fusion resistance ignore for Aemeath's main damage type, Liberation. It's really, really good, her clear best in slot, but it's not far at all behind the competition, the completely free standard Emerald of Genesis. Let's talk about that. This weapon has identical base stats, an ER bonus, and a stacking attack buff whenever a resonance skill is used. Aemeath uses, well, a lot of these in her rotation, making it very simple for her to maintain its uptime, and her performance in her best teams with EOG instead of her signature is still great. I heavily recommend each player try Aemeath on this before deciding to invest in her sig. You'll be pleasantly surprised. There aren't really any other weapon options to discuss here, since EOG is very easy to obtain either through the standard banner or the free UL45 weapon box, and should be on every player's account already. Now let's talk about Aemeath's Echoes. Trailblazing Star is her best in slot set, providing massive crit damage and fusion buffs as long as the wielder can apply Fusion Burst or Toon Rupture. Aemeath does both. For her Echo main stats, you'll prioritize crit 4 costs, 2 fusion damage 3 costs, and 2 attack 1 costs. For her substats, you'll want crit rate, crit damage, ER up to 120%, liberation damage, attack percentage, rolls, and pretty much nothing else, since pretty much every other stat is awful on her. The last area of investment when it comes to Aemeath involves your wallet or a lot of saved astrite, her sequence nodes. Big thanks to Pridewin for calculating the estimated damage increase per node, and get ready for a doozy, ladies and gentlemen, because these are ridiculous. Aemeath's S1 dramatically alters her playstyle, first giving her 300% crit damage during instant responses heavy attacks, and gives her additional suction when using the ability. And when Aemeath is out of combat and not using her heavy attack for 4 seconds, she enters instant response brilliance. This state inherits all the benefits of instant response and grants 100 points of synchronization rate when the charged heavy attack in either form is used. She also gains the ability to carry over her trail stacks. When she defeats a target with the trail active, she enters the sealed trail state, and when enemies are defeated with this buff active, she records the highest stack count among targets, and her next skill will immediately inflict the maximum stacks onto her next target, remove the sealed trail buff, and have a cooldown of 1 second. Her second node grants a 100% damage multiplier to both her Seraphic Duet attacks, and causes her Toon Rupture damage from Seraphic Duet to be increased by 20% for each time it hits the same target, up to 5 stacks. In Fusion Burst form during Stardust Resonance, the burst damage is increased to 400% against her main target, and the damage buff from Fusion Trail is increased by an additional 15% per stack, and when a target is defeated, she'll immediately trigger a Fusion Burst at their location. Her S3 grants Finale a 100% damage multiplier increase, a 40% buff to Overdrive, and Instant Response's heavy attack now inflicts Rupture or Fusion Burst. Aemeath also loses all restrictions on her second inherent, granting its full 60% crit damage and 25% damage amp on her Liberation regardless of the teammates on her team. Her S4 is simple. Thank God. It simply gives a 20% all attribute damage bonus whenever her intro skills, sync strikes, or seraphic duets are performed for 30 seconds. The fifth node refreshes her flight meter whenever she defeats a target and also gives her KO immunity, turning her into a digital ghost for 5 seconds whenever she takes fatal damage. She then provides the entire team with a shield for 360% of her attack. After 5 seconds, she revives with full HP and 30 points of resonance energy, with a 10-minute cooldown. And her S6, the big one, causes enemies to take 40% more liberation damage from Aemeath and also allows both her fusion and Toon Rupture forms to crit, with 80% crit rate and 275% crit damage. She also doubles the rate of her Rupturous and Fusion Trail buildup. When out of combat, enemies near Aemeath also immediately gain the maximum number of trail stacks, and whenever she uses Seraphic Duet, enemies are inflicted with 10 stacks of both trails. A huge damage increase. Now that we've covered Aemeath's build, let's get into some of her teams and optimal rotations. And given her second inherent, Aemeath desperately wants teammates who either inflict or deal Rupture or Fusion Burst damage, and there aren't that many. However, due to the existence of Mono Fusion, there are a lot more team comps that you might have thought for her. Aemeath's best overall team on release will feature Linné as the sub DPS on Rupture mode, Mornier as the support, and Aemeath on Rupture mode as well as the DPS. You'll start off the team's rotation on Mornier, performing 3 hits of her basic chain before using her enhanced heavy. Then you'll basic attack 3 times and cancel her third hit's animation with her skill. Then you'll use her second enhanced heavy attack to mark targets, Liberation, Echo skill, and then outro to Linné. Linné will then skill, Liberation, and then charge up her heavy attack. You'll then jump 3 times, use her enhanced plunge, and then echo skill and outro to Aemeath. Aemeath will then intro in, perform a 3rd and 4th basic, then use her Liberation. You'll then do basics 2, 3, and 4, and then do her first Seraphic Duet. Then you'll perform 3 more attacks, and then Seraphic Duet number 2. Then you'll enter Instant Response, use her Charged Heavy, and then use Finale to end the rotation. Then you'll outro back to Mornier, who will then start her rotation in hovering mode, shortening her rotation. This team heavily leverages Aemeath's Rupturous Trail and allows her to excel very well in single target, but it also works in AoE. If you don't have Linné and have Lupa, you can opt for a Mono Fusion oriented lineup, with Aemeath on Rupture mode. For this team, the rotation will be virtually identical until Lupa intros in for Mornier. You'll Liberation, then spam basics until Lupa performs both her heavy air and ground attacks to fully charge her forte. Then you'll use her enhanced skill, Echo skill, and then swap to Aemeath, performing the identical rotation as before. There's room to quick swap in this team during Lupa's air and ground heavy attacks, performing some basic attacks on Aemeath to charge up her forte, but the team still performs very well without any extra inputs. And with this shortened rotation, you can simply ultimate immediately after introing in, as you'll have more of a synchronization rate built up and won't need to use her basic attacks. Another team that leverages this Mono Fusion core involves replacing Mornier with Brant or Chang Li, with Aemeath still on Rupture mode. In these teams, you'll start off on Lupa, using your skill and then your Liberation before performing her air attack and then ground attack to charge up her forte. Then you'll enhance skill, Echo skill, and then swap to Brant. Brant will then Liberation, basic attack until he has a full forte, then Anchor and Echo skill, and swap to Aemeath, who performs the same rotation as her other teams. Much like the prior lineups, Aemeath can quick swap during Lupa's rotation to prep her forte circuit to shorten her actual on-field rotation. And if you're running this team with Chang Li, keep in mind you have to quick swap to perform Aemeath's rotation during Chang Li's 10-second outro window, and you'll also have no healer. This is only recommended if you want to get a little bit sweaty. And now we'll also have Aemeath's most overall disappointing team, and that's her Fusion Burst team with Chisa. This team is missing its third teammate, so it performs the best with Lene as the sub DPS on Rupture mode and Aemeath on Fusion Burst mode. In this team, you'll open up with Chisa's skill and then her follow-up basic. Then you'll Echo skill Liberation and then spam basics until she uses her Big Scissor attack. Then you'll enhance skill and spam chainsaw attacks until Chisa leaps into the air. And then you'll outro skill to Lene and perform the same rotation as in the Rupture team, and then outro to Aemeath for her traditional rotation. This team, however, is just not going to be that great until the user of Chromatic Foam is released after version 3.1, so stay tuned for Chisa lineups. You can opt to replace units like Mornier or Chisa with the Shorekeeper, but keep in mind you'll lose a lot of synergy on Aemeath's second inherent. However, she's still perfectly capable of clearing, just put her on Rupture mode in most cases. Aemeath also has very limited potential in Quick Swap that mainly focuses on building up her forte during her other teammates' rotations via her basic attacks. This allows her to shorten her rotation after introing in by performing less basic attack to reach her 200 synchronization rate needed to max out her resonance. Stay tuned for more advanced tech in a future video. At the end of the day, Aemeath is a unit that has the highest damage potential in the game and many existing team comps, with a lot more room to grow in the future, and with her performance on free-to-play options fantastic, she doesn't take a lot of personal investment to get up and running. However, she grows exponentially in power as she gains more and more limited teammates, but those teammates aren't locked into working with her, like say Arrow Rover with Cartithia, and they can become anchors of other high-performing lineups. If you're a veteran, she'll likely be plug and play, but if you're somebody with a smaller roster, maybe you'll need a bit of time to build up to Aemeath's full potential. But she's a solid pick as the new leader of the meta regardless. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.